Okay, are we ready, Kyoki?
Yes, I think we are. So welcome to this news conference of the Hawaii State Teachers Association on our position about whether State School Superintendent Christina Kishimoto's contract should be renewed. We're going to have some opening remarks from Corey Rosenlee, who is the HSTA State President, and then he'll take your questions. Corey?
Good morning. I'm Corey Rosenlee, President of the Hawaii State Teachers Association. The Hawaii State Teachers Association's Board of Directors, made up of volunteer teacher leaders from across the state, has voted unanimously to ask the Board of Education to not renew Superintendent Kishimoto's contract. This is not the first time HSTA has taken a position against Superintendent Kishimoto's decisions. Last August, the HSTA Board of Directors passed a no confidence vote in Superintendent Kishimoto's leadership in safely reopening schools. Hawaii's Board of Education, on numerous occasions, has had to publicly change or rescind decisions made by the superintendent. Most recently, at the last Board of Education meeting, the board voted unanimously to demand that the superintendent rescind her unilateral decision to cancel the teacher shortage differentials for hard-to-fill positions. During the pandemic, the BOE has had to countermand the superintendent's decisions several times, including when she refused to enforce the use of face masks and social distancing until she was instructed to do so by the BOE. And it's not just teachers and the BOE who've had a difficult time with the superintendent. In a survey published yesterday, principals also complained about DOE's leadership under Kishimoto. 72% disagreed that communication from DOE to principals is timely and responsive, and 58% disagreed that DOE works collaboratively with principals to support their schools. Throughout this pandemic, Superintendent Kishimoto has shown her unwillingness to respect and honor her legal obligation to engage in consultation and bargaining with her teachers and HSTA. Instead, she has chosen mandates. In one instance, this forced HSTA to file a complaint with the Hawaii Labor Relations Board. Only after we filed that complaint did the DOE agree to engage in impact bargaining. However, there has been very little effort on the DOE's part to actually resolve the outstanding issues. Furthermore, in the fall, the superintendent refused to allow teachers and other employees time to prepare for distance learning during the pandemic until directed to do so by the BOE following a public outcry by our members and others. This spring, she prioritized using federal stimulus funds for tutors over maintaining current school employees and their positions. That required yet again another entity to step in when state lawmakers introduced bills to require that stimulus funds be used to preserve public school jobs that are most important for serving our keiki. And she has repeatedly, time after time, failed to provide adequate and clear communication to DOE employees. For these reasons and more, HSTA is asking members of the BOE's Human Resources Committee to vote against renewing Superintendent Kishimoto's contract at their meeting on Thursday. Thank you, and I'll be happy to take some questions.
So we have Jen Boniza first from KHON2. Hi, Jen.
Hi there. Hopefully you guys can hear me.
I can hear you.
You know, Corey, can you tell me what is the process to remove Kishimoto, and how quickly could a replacement for her be found?
Well, the first step is on Thursday, there is on the agenda the item of renewing her contract. So if the Board of Education does not vote to renew the contract, that would then go up if the Human Resources Committee votes not to renew the contract, then that would go up to the full board for a full vote.
The second part of that was how quickly could they find a replacement for her?
So her contract, I believe, goes into the end of July. And so that's when her contract would expire, and that would allow the Board of Education time to do a search for a new superintendent.
Okay, and next we have Nicole Tam from KITV. Nicole?
Hi, Corey. I was wondering what kind of qualities are you looking for in a superintendent, that if not Kishimoto?
Well, I think that through what we've seen through this pandemic is you need, and through all the crises, number one is it's so important for someone that, you know, is actually from Hawaii, that understands our educational system and its very uniqueness. You know, we are the only statewide school system in the entire country. We have to work with the legislature to fund the DOE, and you have to work with a Board of Education for the entire state. So I think through these lessons, we've learned some of the criteria that would be important for our next superintendent.
Okay, how about Lynn Kawano? Oh, I'm sorry. How about Suvan Lee next from Civil Beat?
Hey, Corey. Can you please just clarify again that official process the board must take to vote whether or not to renew her? I know that this is on the subcommittee agenda for human resources. However, it was my understanding that there has to be a formal action item on the general meeting for the full board to take a vote. Are you hearing otherwise?
So the first step is the Human Resources Committee to take a position. Once they have taken a position, it goes up to the full board for a decision. So the expectation is on Thursday that the Human Resources Committee, and to be fair, I'd have to go look, but I believe it's 7 of the 9 BOE members are on the Human Resources Committee. So this gives a good indication that if you get 5 or more votes on the Human Resources Committee to not renew her contract, then that's going to be the same vote that would happen at the next BOE meeting.
Okay, next is Lynn Kawano from Hawaii News Now.
Hey, Corey, so what would happen if the board doesn't go along with this and decides to move forward? Is there recourse?
So if the Human Resources Committee does not decide, if the Human Resources Committee decides to renew her contract, then that would still go to the full board for that decision making. But I think, Lynn, the big decision is going to be is we're going to get an indication on Thursday of what the board's intent will be. And Lynn, let me just finish up by saying this. This is why we're coming out now. You know, we know that there have been, if you have just been listening to Board of Education meetings, there's been a lot of frustration. Board of Education members in a previous evaluation also marked the superintendent down on certain categories, including communication. And so, you know, just the last board meeting, you could just hear a lot of contention going on between board members and the superintendent.
Thanks, Corey.
Okay, thank you, Lynn.
Anybody else have any more questions?
Sure, I do. This is Nina from the Star Advertiser. So of all the criticisms you have for the superintendent, which one was the one that for you is the greatest factor? And actually, is there anything positive you could say about the superintendent's performance?
The biggest thing, thank you, Nina. The biggest question is this. If you had to ask what is the most important issue, is that, you know, our teachers every day, they're risking their lives and doing the best that they can to teach. And they want to know that the superintendent has their back as well. And whether it's forcing teachers to go to school, even though they were not teaching students and could have teach from home, whether it's telling 800 teacher and 1,300 DOE employees that they were going to lose their jobs, it's just been this consistent theme of not showing the teachers across the state that she cares for them. And if we care for our teachers, they care for our keiki. If you had to ask something, when the superintendent came in, we had the highest hopes for her. We wanted to work with her and see that she would succeed. And there have been some areas that, we have found common agreement on. But we've just seen time and time again, just the lack of willing to work with the teachers in the union. We have been willing to meet with them. We're willing to work nights, weekends, whatever it takes to come to agreement. And the superintendent said, I would rather just mandate and not work with the union. And so if you do that, it just makes the teachers across the state feel like they're just not cared for.
Any other questions?
Was there anything positive you might be able to say, or did you already add that in? Sorry.
No, like I said, we had the highest hopes when she began. We have worked on several issues together, specifically trying to work on the special education differentials. And that's why it was so disheartening to see that a program that had shown the most success we have had in years of fixing special education, that she unilaterally decides to get rid of that program after the Board of Education told her not to. And her response was, there's no money. But we said, why don't you wait to see what President Biden's doing with this federal stimulus package that we estimate could bring in $442 million. So to tell teachers that they're not going to maintain a program where teachers move for, so it's a good, Nina, it's a great way to show the arc of her leadership, from trying to work with HSTA on creating a program to end the huge vacancies we have in special education, to, in her time, trying to get rid of that program without working with us. And so you can see how things have changed.
Any other
So
questions?
if the board doesn't recommend to not renew her contract and she does get renewed, what would HSTA do moving forward?
I think, Nicole, we're going to wait to see what happens on Thursday. We're going to testify at the Board of Education. And like I said before, if you look at the consistent messaging from what the principals came out in their survey, what the Board of Education members have said, I think we're going to all wait to see on Thursday and try as best we can to encourage that we think it's time to look for a new superintendent.
Hey, Corey, this is Sivan. Can you please outline what the HSTA's internal process or protocol is for making a vote or voting on such a matter like this? You said that the Board of Directors, right, unanimously voted to recommend to the board not to renew her. What's that process internally look like for you?
So first of all, let me explain what the Board of Directors is. We have 29 volunteer teachers from across the state. They give up their weekends and time to lead, and they are elected to these positions. We have 12 chapters, and each of them have their own chapter presidents. So there is a process where seeing that this was going to be on the Board of Education agenda, we wanted to make sure that HSTA had a position. So this weekend, there is something called an MBI, which is a new business item that is brought to our Board of Directors to be able to vote on. And so I will tell you that our Board of Directors, like I said, this is not the first time where they've expressed, that they've had disagreements with the superintendent and have been, upset by some of the decision making. And so, the Board of Directors decided that they voted unanimously that they think it's not appropriate to both renew her contract and it's time to look for a new superintendent.
Can you give us some indication of what other issues the Board of Directors has convened in this matter to vote on such a thing? Like, what other things would they vote on?
Oh, we vote on all sorts of things. Just today, we sent out an email to our members talking about our desire to bargain with the DOE about reopening of schools. And that was an important issue that we deal with. But all the time, there are issues that are brought up to our Board of Directors. HSTA is what I call an extremely democratic organization. From our chapters as small as Lanai to as big as Leeward, we have elected leaders that come together, represent the teachers. They have their own executive boards. So there's a process that we go through for decision making.
And I'm sorry, just one more really quickly to follow up on that. How long did the discussion take with the board this weekend? Was there just immediate consensus as far as the vote? Was there a lot of discussion around it? Can you give us some of that detail?
It was pretty consistent. There was just so much frustration from our teachers. This is not, teachers by their very nature are caring people. And we don't want to do, anything that would try to hurt someone. But in this case, there had been so much built up frustration. Every single time you've seen it over the last year. We've had thousands upon thousands of teachers having to go to the Board of Education so many times to get the Board of Education to change a position the superintendent had taken. And these are the teacher leaders across the state that have to organize teachers to do this. And so they've had to spend so much of their time just to try to make sure that our schools had the basics, that students had to wear face masks, that we had social distancing, that there was time for our teachers to plan to move to distance learning, to try and keep the differentials. This time and time again, we've had to keep on going to the Board of Education, and the Board of Education has, when they've heard all the teachers and DOE employees saying in this voice, we need this time, we need these conditions, the Board of Education has voted time and time again to follow that. And so they're the ones that have had to go through this process, and they've been frustrated. And so that was definitely shared with our Board of Directors meeting.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Hi there, it's Nina from the Star Advertiser again. So you just mentioned it. I was just curious to know of the school reopening date after spring break, March 22. Did the board take a vote on that, on being able to bargain with the BOE about it? Or what's your general position about returning to school, students
So
returning?
for that, so Nina, our Board of Directors voted that we want to sit down with the DOE to try to make this happen. And I wish this had happened a long time ago. So what we're trying to do right now is to meet with the DOE. And I appreciate some leaders from across the state trying to get everyone together at the table. But we want to find a way to make it happen. And some of the things that we talked about is right now, our teachers are deep into the process of getting vaccinated. We have really low cases in Hawaii. And if there are accommodations that are made for trying to protect teachers that can't get vaccinated, or are there accommodations made for parents that don't feel comfortable with sending their child to school, then we feel like the best thing is for HSTA to work with the DOE to find a way to try to bring more students back on campus.
Thanks, great.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? All right, and we did, as Corey mentioned, we did send out a message to all of our HSTA members across the state about this development today, and more information will be available on our website shortly. A web story may be posted now or very, very shortly. And we thank you all for joining us at this news conference. And you folks know how to get in contact with us in the communications department if you have any follow-up questions. Thanks, reporters, and aloha. Have a good day.